Welcome to the second part of this I Start Wondering conversation on the importance of taking fallow periods in life. I'm Dorian Martin, the founder of I Start Wondering, and we're going to continue our conversation with Jill Penaloza. This podcast gives you a little deeper look into both Jill's fallow period as well as my experience over a decade ago of taking a fallow period. Mine was a year, Jill's was extended as well, but we also found the importance of taking shorter periods since then that help us identify and redefine what we want in life. In this podcast, we're going to also dive into how these types of periods of quiet and introspection have an effect on relationships, and how we can use them to begin to really listen more deeply into where we truly want to go in life and how to shift life. So I hope you enjoy this second part and enjoy.
But as I age, and I'm almost 65 now, and what I'm aware of is some of the things that I am still learning about how to take care of myself, because I just disconnected from myself when I was young, and then after after my fallow period and being an art therapist and working just so hard and being a professional, and then a meditation teacher and a mom and a grandma, that it's only now really hitting me how I'm still pushing through in ways that I want to learn not to push through. Now, my body has never needed to stop functioning for me, because I've learned enough in that period that I need to listen so that my body doesn't suffer the consequences of not hearing it. So now what I'll do is, much more often, if my body starts to feel tired, I'm practicing listening more and slowing down more, and really honoring the listening. So I guess it would be like little fallow periods, right? Saying, okay, this field needs to rest so the nutrients can build. And part of that rest is also me letting go of anything being work anymore. So often I find, if I'm doing something I love, but it feels like work, then I'm telling myself a story that I have to be better than I am, or I have to do it faster than I'm doing it, or someone's going to be negatively impacted if I somehow don't do something a certain way, or I'm not good enough there, or something like that. That I love, at this point in my life, I think I love everything I'm choosing to do, as long as I can get my head out of the way, so that the fallow period potentially is the quiet inside myself, rather than anything I'm actually doing. that when I can move from a place of peace inside myself, nothing I do is disruptive because I'm choosing it from peace. I'm choosing it from love. I'm choosing it from connection. I'm choosing it from consciousness. I'm letting it choose me in many ways. So it's a really, really good teacher for me in letting go. Because the silence is not outside of me. It's actually inside of me.
Oh, that is very, very profound because so many, myself included at times, can get so caught up in the drama of life outside us, but drama in our heads. And so that is a different way to think about fallow and how to find that inner sanctuary.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. Well, and it's so funny. I hadn't put it into those words until talking with you about it. So I really deeply appreciate this opportunity to talk about this. It makes me really happy to know that I have that in myself. I don't need to go look for somewhere to be alone anymore.
So, in other words, you're kind of like Dorothy from The Wizard of Oz, learning that it's all inside ourselves. Tap those
Yeah,
ruby red slippers and you can find your way home.
yeah, yeah. Yeah, and I like those ruby red slippers. They're pretty cute.
They are, they are, as long as they're flats this time.
No,
Like,
I'll go with the flat ones too. Flat with soft soles.
exactly. So let me ask a question too, because this has been really, this is a profound conversation. A lot of individuals would be concerned about a fallow period, whether it's a year, whether it's a month, whether however long it is, because of potential ramifications in their relationships with their loved ones. Because it's like, how's my husband going to react? And you talked about that a little bit, or how are my girls going to do, etc. But also how the relationship shifts, the dynamics shift because of that void that we create in life where it's not always going, going, going. What did you see or experience in your relationships, both during your period in and then also moving forward?
That's a good question. I think my husband Bob was very concerned about me. Um, as soon as he's finding out, oh my gosh, this is major depression, she has to use medication or at least try medication. Um, that was kind of a wake-up call for him. And I think I was crying so much, at the beginning, there were so many tears that I had not shed over the course of my lifetime, honestly.
Mm.
And I can remember at one point, one of my therapist had suggested, or maybe it was a psychiatrist, suggested I take a martial arts class to move some of the energy through me. And so I took Ishinru, which is a beautiful form of martial arts. And, there's, I don't even remember how to pronounce it. I think it's Kias or Kayas, which are like forms. And then there's kind of fighting. And one night I had gone to class and I came home, and for some reason, Bob was at the front door, and he was kind of coming out to greet me at the car. Maybe I was sitting in the car a while, and he came out to see what was going on. And all I can remember is opening up the car door and falling on the grass, sobbing and sobbing and sobbing and sobbing. And I could not stop sobbing. And that release, he witnessed that. And so I think for him, it's like, let's just get her back together because something weird is happening here. And so he also had been raised in a family of women. And so he also had a sensibility of caring that he could draw on that wasn't judgmental. And it was just like, kind of, can I use a little French here? Oh shit. Like, like, holy shit, what's going on with her? Right.
Yeah.
And so he let me take the lead in my own healing. And he wouldn't, I don't think I remember him. There was a point in time when we were very young, first married, where I was staying home with the kids and babysitting other kids. And he would come home and look around and go, wow, laundry's not done. What's going on? Right. And I'm like, and I would get furious with him. I'm like, what are you talking about? You think that I'm doing all this and I can do laundry? So he didn't do that anymore. It was like, he didn't even ask. It was basically just, how are you? What are you doing? Not that it was perfect and not that it was always that way, but in general, he was courageous enough to give me my time to heal. And the way that changed the relationship, number one, was he was thrilled when, well, he didn't, when I said, and now we're going to pay for grad school for me. That was like, oh, whoa. So that was a little bit of but he supported me going through it, literally, financially, as well as emotionally. And he took care of the girls in large part. This, one of the sad things for me is when I wish I had waited to go to grad school because my fallow period ended with this burst of energy and I just went for it. But it was when our girls were teens. And I think they could have used me more around the home. And I was absolutely over my head with education, but I was loving it. So I missed out on some parenting there that I wish my girls missed out on some parenting. And I wish I had been there differently. But he was there for them too. So, and now I would say that nothing I do surprises him. There is nothing, including going to India for a month to trek in northern India. He's kind of going, okay, so what are you doing? I'm going to go to China and do this thing. Oh, I'm going to go to the Philippines. I'm going to go to Europe. Oh, by the way, I'm heading over to this. So I do want to really acknowledge my privilege here, that our financial privilege allowed me to make these choices. So there are many, 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 many women, women of color, as well as white women who are not able to make these choices. So I feel very, very privileged to have been able to do this. My husband is actually Mexican. Bob is Mexican, but he presents as white. And so he was able to get jobs that paid enough to support my habit of wellness.
Mm-hmm.
So now, I mean, now I'm hoping, I think, that my example of continuing growth is, and I've always given him permission to do what he feels he needs to also. So it's been part of our relationship since that time, is we both have permission to grow and change. So I don't know if that answers your question, but
That it does, because it always seems to me that when one person shifts, the other one shifts. Now, how the shift happens, varies depending upon the dynamics and the personalities and the perspectives of the individuals involved. So I think that's a wonderful way of saying how that you described how that period reframed your relationship in a totally different way.
Yeah.
Yeah, I will say, and I appreciate, I'm just saying this for the listeners, you know, the way that Jill has gone through the fallow period differed from mine in that I worked through it. I had to work through it. I didn't have the financial means to be able to do it like she did it. However, what I like Jill, although I was not diagnosed, I really knew that I had reached a breaking point where I needed to take stock and really make some different decisions. And to do that for my fallow period was to remove everything, almost everything out of my life other than the things that I had to do. And that was work, that was taking care of my father, who at that point was in a long-term care facility, um, finish the damn dissertation and get that filed. So those were the only things I knew I had to do. Take care of my dog.
Dorian,
Um,
can I interrupt you just for a second? That does not
yes,
sound very fallow. You do realize that, right? That's like, holy cow, you are so doing so many things.
but compared to what I had been doing, there was an end in sight.
Wow.
And so so I, what I did was I knew I had to do those things. And it was a lot easier because dad wasn't with me anymore. So it had changed the dynamic because somebody else was needing to deal with his 24/7 issues, whereas I could pop over as needed once a week, twice a week, daily if I chose to, but I didn't have to be there breakfast, noon, and night doing the caregiving piece. And with the dissertation, I knew I just had to finish, in 2015, just get it filed, and then I was done. And compared to the run up to that the previous year that burned me out, that it felt a lot easier. But what I did for mine was, my tendency had always been to jump at everything and go, okay, let's do it. And I started not doing that. Instead, I would step back and say, let me think about it. And then I decided I wasn't going to automatically do things unless they really lit me up, unless I felt my heart go, as opposed to my mind that thought everything was awesome. Unless my heart said, oh, this could be fun. This is interesting. This is intriguing. This is something you really want to do. And unless I took that time and there were times that I would take that time and I get no real emotion to it. And so I know that wasn't truly resonating with me. Or I'd get nope, I no longer want to do this. And I would begin to cut that out of my life. Um and so that helped me do what I've heard Martha Beck talk about of the being a ship and making small changes in life to totally change your destination. But again, I had to work, so it is doable. It just is just reconfiguring and prioritizing myself, and taking that time as opposed to which, as my experience as women, we don't do. We prioritize everybody else.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it's really stopping and going, my needs are as important as my father's needs.
Yeah.
And so I think that fallow period gave me that. As we talked too, um, And I think you've done it too, even though you said you live from that place of silence and presence within you to be that fallow state that kind of continues to regenerate. But I also would guess that you've done what I've done, which is carve out time periodically and say, since the fallow period, carve out time to say, this is a time where I'm going to spend it for me. In my case, it was during the last part of the pandemic, going and renting a cabin in the Texas Hill Country because I hadn't left town in over a year and a half, but renting a cabin away from everybody and just going and having nothing on the agenda for that week and a half, other than I was doing a spiritual retreat online with Carolyn Mace. That was set up, but it was only like a video in the morning and some journaling prompts. And the rest of the day, you had a theme for the day, but you could spend your day as you wished. And so if I wanted to nap, I could do that. If I wanted to hike, I could do that. If I wanted to play with the cat or do whatever, I could do that, and I was off the grid for the most part, other than my cell phone. So I didn't turn on the TV. Actually, the internet wasn't working at this place, which was a gift. And so other than my cell phone, I didn't have TV or computer really. I just really had the opportunity to be really with myself and quiet and listening deeply. You've done that too, as I remember.
I've done it, but there is a yearning in me. I mean, I haven't done it the way you did it. I've done it in smaller bites, I think. Yeah, most of my time that I take away is spent journeying. So whether it's deepening my spiritual experience at a teacher training or retreat, or with spiritual friends, spending time doing that, or a lot of my off the grid time is spent with grandkids at this point, or family. Oftentimes it might be just, oh my gosh, I have no clients today. I'm just going to lay in bed and read. Mm-hmm. Or something, although it's usually not day. I'm going to take a couple hours. For me, what's been meaningful lately are naps. That's a little fallow period for me, that I incorporate into a day. If I realize, oh, you know what, I'm not going to be it's interesting, I want to say happy. My heart is going to, maybe my younger self is going to feel less taken care of if I don't give myself a nap. And so I'll do that more often. I still push through more than I want to. So I'm really working on that, to not push through and really give myself permission to rest in these small little bits. There's Rest as Resistance. I forget the author, but it's a lovely book about us as women. And it's written by a woman of color, really taking that into perspective too for her. But this idea of we're doing a lot of important work as women on this earth, and that we all need to be considering rest as key to rejuvenation and resilience. So there was something else as you were saying that I was thinking, as far as taking these times. I think it's just that as you described the cabin, that you went to, that the internet happens to not work at, and you have this time, um, that's actually something that I haven't done, but that I keep putting out to the universe, like, okay, I need a cabin, or I need this, or I need, please just give me where there's nobody else that I can see. There is nothing else I can hear. And I very much have put that out to the universe many times, and it hasn't shown up, even when I've kind of explored and looked. And I know that I'm being called to be present without silence happening around me, I think is what maybe my major lesson is at this point in my life, that it's driving me to reach deeper levels of capacity for quiet within myself. That seems to be my personal journey, that somehow the universe is saying, no, guess what? You still got to work on this thing. So I kind of come to peace with it, but there is a part of me, Dorian, that so yearns for what you're talking about. I'm like, yes, a cabin alone. Oh, how awesome. So I'm maybe someday that will manifest, as something, as a direction that I get to move in, or am called to move in.
I know, and that was always very interesting. Doing that was really interesting for me because all of my quote unquote vacations had always been very traditionally active. If you go to some place, you go touring, you go to the museums, you go to the restaurants, you go with friends or family members, and you have an agenda of what you're going to do. And I don't know if it was that we were coming out of the pandemic or, because I would have guessed that would have been the last thing would have called to me because, living alone, why would I want to be alone some more? Uh, but for some reason, it was a moment that it was like, I need to get to know, I need time for myself away because it gives you a different perspective when you're away from your home, your daily life, your routines. It pushes you out and makes you go, oh, let me see the world in a different way. As the roosters come up, or this cat acts like a dog, or, whatever it is, um, that there are different ways of operating in the world rather than the ruts that I have created in my life.
Mhm.
So I find that these types of periods of quiet, and I do fallow periods at home on a regular basis as well. And that's easy to do as well. And again, you know, it varies from person to person, but I made a pretty firm decision during the pandemic that the weekends were mine, that I wasn't going to spend a lot of time working. In fact, I wasn't going to spend any time working unless it was a dire emergency. Because I'm on the computer all the time. And so I'm going to step away from the computer and go outside or go hang out with my dog or be with friends or read or nap or whatever it is that's calling to me, as opposed to being on that constant grind of a wheel that has been ingrained in me by parents, by society, by the voices in my head. And so, in doing that and taking that specific time, I find that I am much more able to be responsive rather than reactive, to use the present process terms, to have a well of energy and joy that I can pull from. So I think it's one of those things that it's a gift that we can give to ourselves. We talk about self-care as being a manicure, a pedicure, a haircut, or, a massage, whatever that might be. And not that those things aren't wonderful in themselves, yet I think expanding our definitions of self-care to include fallow periods, however long or short they are, whether it's a nap, whether it's a weekend, whether it's a week, whether it's a year, however we can structure it, whether it's with, family being around, whether it's on our own, whether it's with a paintbrush, whether it's with a journal, um, is really self-care at a
Mhm.
really deep and important level.
Mhm. Yeah, very well said. I totally agree with you that we are in fact, there was an article somewhere recently that was talking about this, that we need to revision self-care. And that, yeah, absolutely, all the wonderful things of taking care of our body, massages, stuff, that's wonderful and necessary. But this idea of deeply going into listening as maybe the ultimate self-care, what strikes me as I work with clients this day and age is that the world is starting to speed up so much, and we're just inundated with so much hardship, really people in a lot of pain, and there's very little space almost between that happening anywhere around the world and us personally. And that when I was young, there was enough space to go get filled up again and then come back to do what you needed to do. But that space feels like it's kind of shrinking outside of us. There's more and more to deal with and to process. And so we have to be cultivating the self-care in the way you're describing it, which is that um, quieting, that nurturing, that fallow, creating those times to go inside regularly, not every once in a while and not haphazardly, but really prioritizing that as a way that we're actually going to be able to survive and be able to love and be able to engage lovingly in this world moving forward.
Beautifully, beautifully said. Thank you. Well, and I guess, we've reached a point where I think we've had a beautiful conversation about your experience. We've given listeners an opportunity and some options and reasons why they might want to consider this. But are there any takeaways or, key points that you would invite women and anybody else who might be listening, women of a certain age, but anybody else who's listening, to really consider moving forward about a fallow period?
Well, the thing that comes to mind is the listening, because what's needed for each person will be known within them. And so one of the ways to get in touch with that is to, at least that I've used to get in touch with that, is to have a conversation with yourself. Maybe even ask yourself, what do you want? And then just let yourself write about it. Or you could draw, what do you want? And it just, the image doesn't even have to make sense to you. It could just be almost a scribble that you create. What do I want? You just use color and shape and line and create something, or you use paints, whatever, to create an image, what I want. And it doesn't have to mean anything. You can just begin to look, and you can even say you used red in it. You can say, red, what are you trying to tell me here? Or yellow, what do I need to know about you? Why is it important you're here? Oh, I'm here to tell you blank, so that we can start to have conversations with the parts of us that are not easy to access from our stories and from our mind. They are in our bodies. They are with us all the time. They guide our every action and behavior and thought without us even understanding it. So connecting in with those deeper parts through journaling, through art making and dialogue, through anything that feels good to you, you know. And if there is somebody out there that you know that does this kind of thing, reaching out to them and say, hey, listen, what are you doing? You talk to friends. That's where I always have gotten lots of support and help, including with you, Dorian. And so, yeah, so that's my thought. Connect, go to your community, see what's working for people, go inside of yourself to your own internal community and see what your community wants to do. And then do a little bit, like what I liked what you talked about with the ship, right? A little, and then you're moving in a different direction. But it doesn't have to be big steps. It can be something small.
That's beautiful. And I'll just add one more piece to that, your idea of listening, which I love. In my experience, it took a while for me to hear. And so I'd invite listeners not to feel like you necessarily will get a full-blown aha moment within 5 minutes of asking something, especially if you haven't listened internally for a long period of time, which is what had happened to me. And so it may be you ask a question, what do you want? And it may be a sudden, I need a nap.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And you take the nap and then you don't hear anything for a while. It may be, again, listening to your heart and what do you want? And for me, it's been this summer, it's like, let me have cherries.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's little things,
Yes.
but it's following that the yellow brick road, i.e. Dorothy, of what are the things that light you up and listening more and more deeply. And eventually you you start hearing more.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah, you start hearing more, and then the more you become aware, you notice what's being presented to you and can make choices around that. Because oftentimes, if we put that out there, if we're simply starting to take those little steps that you're talking about, take a nap, eat those cherries, go get an ice cream cone, those types of things that someone's in front of us saying, hey, I've got a cabin. No one's using it for a week. Do you want to go for it? You would probably love it. And so just being aware of some of those things that are offered to us that are in the universe, just waiting for us to listen and see. So
Exactly.
I'm actually putting that out there for the universe. And I'm hoping the universe is really listening to me.
I was going to say, as we close this down, if anybody has a cabin that they think Jill would like, feel free to email. I start wondering, you might have like a whole year's worth of cabin.
I might. Oh my goodness.
Um, but yeah, so I want to thank you, Jill, for taking the time, to visit today and have such a rich conversation about your experience, about, admittedly, it was earlier than mine, and that's awesome. You were ahead of me in that you did the work and had and everybody's experience is different. But it's really insightful in sharing what these types of periods can offer. So thank you so, so much.
Thank you for making this so easy, Dorian. It was an absolute pleasure and joy to spend this time with you.
Thank you, dear.